right, and you should be good to go.
All right, I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Board of Finance for Wednesday, April 21st. Not in attendance currently is Mark Mulvaney and Mr. Dunn. I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Public comment. Do we have anybody in here for public comment? Hearing none. All right, Brianna.
We had two correspondences that came in. One is from Brian Muller, and the other was Christy McPadden, WPCA.
Okay.
Want to
Next.
I think we were all here for all of them, so I guess, do I have to do these individually, or can I do them?
Nope, do them all.
All right. I make a motion to approve the minutes of March 9th, 10th, 11th, 15th, 16th, 18th, and April 6th.
I'll second.
Okay, just for the record, as long as we've read the minutes and we agreed to them as well, you didn't have to attend the meeting to approve them. So, hey, Dan, can you mute the fire department?
Thank you. They're not muted.
Thank you. So we don't have to actually have been in attendance as long as we agree with the minutes and how they're written.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Nope.
No. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Since Steve is not here, let's move on to the Board of Ed. Rosa?
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so I forwarded you guys the March financials as well as a document. So to address the March financials first, our overall year-end deficit right now is up about 8,000. We have seen month-to-month decreases in legal fees and salaries, and we think that we'll be under by the end of the year in those accounts, as well as books and supplies. Some of that is still going to be used by the end of the year, so we'll be slightly under budget, but not by much. We are seeing increases in services, health benefits, and it appears that we'll be over budget in heating oil as well, and that's due to a specific issue with Center School. The positive is that there is no change in the special education outplacement costs, so that has held steady, and that's very good. And we're going to be taking a closer look at the electrical account. So we are not anticipating any surprises, but Ken is going to be keeping an eye on that. That's pretty much it for the March financials, unless you had any specific questions.
I'm not going to have a question. I'm going to make a statement. Part of you're not really truly running a deficit. So let's clear that out. Is you're 100,000 behind the budget, but we have the COVID costs such as furniture that drove that.
Exactly.
Which Marcia on her side and Ken are working to get that reimbursed by the state and by the federal government. So currently you don't have 100,000 in the cash to pay your bills, but we're giving you that out of the contingency as we agreed. But the town is going to recuperate that money from grants, extra grants. Marcia, am I correct? Simplified, but correct?
You are correct.
So I don't want people to go away here thinking that the Board of Ed has overrun their budget by 100,000. We're going to get this money back. And when we spent some of this money, we already knew that it would qualify or more than likely qualify to get reimbursed, right, Marcia? I mean, we don't know all the rules yet, but we are fairly confident that spending this money, we would get reimbursed.
At the time we spent it, we didn't know. We were waiting, but we've got 15 different grants out there and they just keep coming. So we are working to maximize the reimbursement for everything, yes.
Okay, so I don't want people to take away from the meeting that the Board of Ed is really overspent. This was anticipated and planned.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So I don't want that to, oh, Steve, you're on. I'm sorry. I would have
Yeah,
asked
sorry,
you.
I was a
didn't know
little
you were
late.
on.
I think the Board of Ed is under budget on their regular budget by a number similar to 400,000 and over budget and the COVID costs that weren't in the budget, but we said we'd cover them in an iterative manner are 500,000, and that's what nets to the 100,000.
Right. So I don't want people to go away, take it away that the Board of Ed is overspent. They're perfectly where we thought we would be, and it'll maybe even a little bit better. So thank you. All
Yeah.
right, Rosa, go ahead.
So the other document that I shared with you is something that you should be familiar with. It's the list of adjustments that that we've been keeping an eye on. The really great news is that we do have that final number for health insurance, and that is a giant savings of $101,000. However, I just learned this today, so it was after I sent you that document. Kerma is increasing their fees relating to cybersecurity, and I'm sure Marcia knows more about this than I do. I only learned about it a couple hours ago, but not in the range of $100,000. So it's not like all of those savings are going to be able to just go away. So we are comfortable reducing our budget even further, probably around 90,000, and that will help get us under 3.
Yeah. So Rosa, can I jump in there?
Yeah.
The history on cybersecurity, for the last year, we've had a cybersecurity policy for free. It was included in our overall insurance from Karma. That we found out about 8 weeks ago was being canceled. They were no longer going to offer it. So we began to have a discussion with our insurance company as to what cybersecurity policy would cost. And just last week, we got a number of $32,000 for both the town and the school side. We're completely vetting that out, but we got a study. We got a study that said 88% of public sector organizations have faced at least one cyber attack over the last 2 years. This is an ongoing problem. I think it's going to continue. We have pretty robust security, and the town and the schools have been working together really hard on this, but I think it makes sense, and I'll go through some of the numbers when I do the first selectmen reports, to get a policy.
Right. I was told something in the or at least just for the school side, something in the neighborhood of 11,000. So,
Yeah, we're looking
want
at
to-
16,000,
yep.
I think, right now, but you just got
That's the maximum.
We have time, Steve, right, to amend this budget? So
Yeah.
Rosa, I think what you put together was awesome, and I think, again, how the transparency is awesome, but let's not take anything out until we figure where we really land and you're comfortable in the end. The transparency to get like for you to put that and, like we talked about, I think was great. And I think that Marcia and Steve are going to come up with some ideas, I think, on some other things. So we're not going to take any now until we figure out what's a safe number for your group. And then obviously we'd ask you if you were comfortable with that number.
Okay.
Is that a fair way to move forward?
That definitely is.
Steve, are you okay with that?
I'm absolutely comfortable with that.
All right.
So when
Anybody
do we-
have any questions for Rosa
Well,
on
there's
any?
one more thing I wanted to mention, just because I know it might be a point of concern for some of you, and that's what's going on at Wisconsin right now. Obviously, the work that's going on, if you drive by, you'll see it. The entire front facade of the building is off, and there's clearly work being done, and that's not in any capital plan because that was a completely unanticipated event. About a month ago, bricks were literally falling off of the facade of the building. So to make it safe, students are obviously still in that building. To make it safe, more of the bricks were taken down, and unfortunately asbestos was found during that demolition work. So it's an issue that we're going to have to address immediately. And that's why the work was we just went ahead and did that work. We did get a cost estimate for that a few hours ago. It's looking in the neighborhood of about $50,000 to repair that facade. We don't have, that'll obviously have to go out to bid and a process that we'll have to start immediately though.
Rosa, I've
Steve's
got
been aware of that,
Yes, yeah.
right? Steve, you've been aware, right, Steve?
Oh, yeah, I've been aware since day one, but I had a conversation with Ken and maybe there was a little confusion here. But I thought just the cost to take it down and secure it was 50,000 and to rebuild it will go out to bid. I
Yeah,
think-
it's that should include the cost of it coming down as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's the total demolition and repair.
I had just 50,000 to take it down. We'll confirm that and
Okay.
we'll let you guys know.
Right,
Yeah.
but you and the school, Steve, have been talking about this and how to handle it, correct?
From day one, the first
Okay.
day we had the problem, I was made aware of it.
Yep, all right. Any questions from our side?
I have not on that. If anybody has a question on that, go ahead, but I have a question on the previous topic.
Go ahead.
So, and this is more for you and Steve than it is for Rosa. When you say we don't have to finalize something today, I understand that, but we have a town meeting in 2 weeks. When do we finalize what we're going to present then? And when do we finalize what we're going to bring to referendum? Because the town meeting's ahead of our next formal meeting. Do we have to have a special meeting before the town meeting?
Not before. The town meeting is for residents to give us comments on the budget. They do have the capability at a town meeting, if you get 0.5% of the registered voters to attend a town meeting, to make a motion and a vote, that's about 400 people, to make a motion and a vote to change the budget down. They can't make a motion to move it up, but they can make a motion to bring any budget line down. But you need that 0.5%. So that town meeting is information for the Board of Finance primarily and the other boards to hear the public and understand what their concerns are on the budget and take that into consideration. And if you feel that there is enough information to make a change, you can meet and make a change to the budget that will go to referendum. Then that's your last chance to make a change to that budget to go to referendum. And that's what you probably would do. And you can do that, I believe, at your meeting, your normal meeting.
Really?
Yeah, I'll check the timing on that because we have to get it in a certain amount of time
Right.
before the actual referendum. We have to publish it. So
And Steve, you've talked to legal counsel on this, correct?
Yes, I have. It hasn't happened in the past, except for once there was an effort that I'm aware of to lower a line item in a budget at a town meeting. Usually people just want to make us aware of what we're doing, what their concerns are.
Right.
I think-
Right. But the point being, if we know we're going to have to change the budget, we should figure out when that is. And that we don't have to do that, I mean, in this conversation, but in the budget conversation we have later on in the meeting, we should iron out when that is. If we can do it at our next meeting, which is the 12th, that's great.
Yeah.
But I fear that's a little late. I don't know that
I'll confirm it. I'll confirm it. I'll confirm the actual dates you have to do it by.
I'd prefer to keep it a regular meeting, Dan, if we were gonna make the
If
change.
possible, I agree. I just don't know if 6 days ahead of referendum is allowed.
Yeah, that's gonna be a little tight because I think we have to publish at least 7 days ahead of time.
Right.
I have to check, well, I have to check the charter and go through it with council.
My point.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. I'd like to make a motion, Steve, that, and everybody, that we move the Center Fire Group to next on the agenda.
I
I'll
don't have any
second.
problem with that. I would just like to make a comment before they go.
Yep. All right, discussion. All those in favor?
All right.
All right,
Aye.
all right, Steve, before they come on, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna make during my first selectmen's conversation, a review of the
We just
change.
changed it. Now this first selectman's doing his thing.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. A list of the changes that we might want to make to the budget. And, that's a cybersecurity for 32,000. The town is going to save $38,000 on health insurance on our side. As Rosa said, they're going to save 101,000. And so, and the EMS budget, they're asking for an additional $90,732. We have sat down with the EMS, Andy and Lou and Sarah and the people over there, gotten quite a bit more information in detail, and we support their request for the additional 90,000. And I'll let Lou and Andy go through why they need that, but I think it's a reasonable request. And as we move forward, we'll review it, but I think it's reasonable. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, Lou, Andy,
Let us share a screen here.
Good evening, everybody. How are you?
And
I appreciate your guys' time and listening to us. Again, we found out last minute of what our budget was before your last meeting, and that's why we kind of raised our hand. We appreciate the work we've done with Steve and all you guys reaching out to understand what's going on.
Somebody's already sharing, so I can't share. So apparently that's what it's telling me right now.
You go ahead.
Okay, yeah, just
Dan,
wait. We're good. It's back.
Okay. So we have a little bit of a quick, very quick slideshow discussing our additional funding requests. During budget deliberations, we were in negotiations with our vendor to secure a new contract for our EMS provider. It was due probably when COVID was up. We went without a contract for a little while. Our vendor was really good. He kept our old prices up. We had to make some adjustments on our staffing and the way they were compensated. We have now secured a constant monthly bill from them, which is going to help us plan for budgeting. That's why we're here. I can tell you what it's going to cost in the next 5 years. Our EMS staffing, our constant budgets, our constant monthly costs, which is really cool. It's the first time it's been fluctuating based on different things. We've eliminated some of those things. Our vendor has absorbed some of those things. Almost $50,000 a year worth of stuff he's absorbed from us, which is over the life of this contract, $250,000 that the vendor absorbed, which is a huge success for us. We worked really hard on this, and we'll get into that in a second. There was a couple of different variations of the budget. We submitted one on the 16th of February, which is after when Steve had to submit his by law, and we weren't aware of that. So we were not aware of the numbers until the other day. So basically you can see the adjustments. It's all staffing, operations, and training. That's where it is. Our staffing costs are up because of the cost of running the operation is up. We're also have an additional paramedic on call at night now. There are 100 calls that occur between 6 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning, second calls, addition to what we cover. So while the ambulance that we have staffed is out on a call from those hours, there's about the last couple of years, it's been 100 calls. We cover about 60 of them with volunteers, and the other 40 are done by Danbury, all right, which A, costs us money, B, we can't bill for it, and C, the people are waiting about 25 minutes for an ambulance. That's unacceptable to me. That 100 calls doesn't really require us. I don't think we're at the point yet to have to hire people to work around the clock, but the on-call portion of what we've established is going to alleviate those issues for us and allow people to get prompt medical care. I'm not okay with people waiting 25 minutes for an ambulance. 40 times a year is way too much for that to happen. I understand there are times where that might happen once in a while due to high call volume. Last Thursday night, we had 3 calls in 10 minutes. And myself and Detective Gerstenmaier were doing rescue breathing on an elderly patient by ourselves waiting for an ambulance. That just happens sometimes. This is what it is. But I think now with our new system that we have, the personnel costs that we initially requested on the February 16th was $959,572. That's $79,000 a month, which is a Vintech annual charge of $937. There's a contingency in there of 2.32% of $21,000. That covers any intercepts that we might have to do with Danbury, any inclement weather. We upstaff during bad weather and major events, and night staff volunteer coverage. Right now, I'm down a couple EMTs that cover night shifts voluntarily. because of the fact we have one that's pregnant, we have some long-term medical situations. So we need to cover some extra shifts. So we're budgeting for that. So there was a $69,000 difference between the Board of Finance budget that was approved and the one that we requested. And quite frankly, we just won't be able to operate without the money that we're requesting. Yep, go ahead. Operations, we requested $88,000. The medical supplies and disposables, $52,000. We covered more calls. There's more supplies. There's cost of supplies are going up. I can't control that. Cost of medicines especially are going up that we're required to carry. And it just, it's out of our control. We are working on, with our new supervisor, an inventory control system and to kind of lessen any waste. And hopefully we'll see a remarkable change next year. Service contracts, those don't go away. I need to have all my equipment serviced. It just is what it is. Those are constant numbers. The Northwest CMED assessment, that's $7,100. That's an annual thing. That's to use the radio to talk to the hospital. We can't control that. The oxygen lease contract is $4,500. And again, we give oxygen to the police department and also some medical supplies. We have a really good relationship with them, and Candlewood, we're responsible for all that. So all the oxygen comes through us. The cell phone contract, the electronic patient records, the emergency management generator, propane, and at the technology was $10,155. So we were $7,700 short in there, and we need that to be put back in to be able to operate appropriately. Okay. Training, we requested $13,700. The first responder training was for $6,500. We are going to train a group of firefighters to go on those extra calls while people are waiting a long period of time for an ambulance, so we can provide some medical care in the meantime. There are situations of those 100 times a year where our irregular ambulance is out and we're short people. All right. And it might be their second call, third call. So what we're going to do is we're going to give them baseline training, which is emergency medical responder, EMR. It's what the police are. And it'll give us some additional boots on the ground and help us out. So that was part of that. EMT classes, that's 2 people. The EMT class is $2,800. When I took mine back in 1991, it was $200. Now they're $1,400 per student. Online training, which is a requirement, which we're going to have to do with our staff to keep them up on our current things. We split it with fire is $2,000, and CPR instructor fees is $900. Again, the Board of Finance gave us $4,200 and they cut us $9,600, which is a 69% decrease. And again, I need all that. I mean, I could do without the first responder training. If we wanted to wait, I think it's a bad idea. And I think it's moving forward, we have to. So I would like to see all of that fully restored into to run EMS. So here's the bottom line about comparison with other towns. The town of New Fairfield pays $753,000 for one ambulance. They do 11 or 10,000 or 1,011 calls. They have a population of about 14,000. They're paying personnel-wise $745 per call. We're able to determine that. These are numbers from the State Department of Health, so this is what we have to annually provide to them. And they figure a 10.7 minute response time. All right, they're on the high end. Wolcott, which is a kind of similar town to us, they run 2 ambulances, kind of in a hybrid system like we do, 24 hours a day. They do 1,679 calls. Their population is very similar to ours, 16.5. They're operating about $514 per cost per call, and their response time is 6.6 minutes. And here we are at 9:59. We have 2 staffed ambulances with a paramedic on call at night, 1,690 calls, population almost 17,000, $568 per call, and it's a 6.5 minute response time. It's one of the best response times out there. All right. So that's how we kind of compare to similar sized towns and the costs to run the operation. You can see New Fairfield, they're paying $750,000 for one ambulance. We're paying $959 for 2. All right, so that's a huge thing. And every time that ambulance goes out the door into the hospital, you're looking at it out of service between 90 minutes and 2 hours. So you better hope if you're the first person to call an ambulance if you only have 1. We're lucky we have 2. We have a busy enough call volume that we can run that. And we only run that second ambulance during high incidence hours, which is 8 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night. So we have, between those hours, you have a fully staffed second ambulance. And at night now you have an on-call paramedic between 6 at night and 8 in the morning who can cover calls with a volunteer and provide quicker medical care. Again, we'll go back here. That's what we're asking for, guys, $90,751. And those are the 3 lines. You know, there were some questions from some people at town hall about, you know, efficiency and hours worked and things like that. They're not making widgets. There's days that they'll sit there for 16 hours and not move. Okay. Then there's days, those are rare. Then there's days that they'll be there for 16 hours and do 20 calls. So there's no real rhyme or reason to that. There's an average and things average out. You know, as far as productivity goes, because that was a question that was posed to us. I don't feel comfortable if we don't staff the ambulance to this level here. If we don't staff this appropriately, I don't think that we're doing our citizens just. Going forward, I've talked to Steve, and we're going to establish and I had mentioned this at our last meeting with you guys, a committee of people between the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, zoning, billing officials, fire company, EMS, to kind of monitor when we have to make the next step. Because as this town grows, if you look around, things are getting built, that makes that number go up. And we have to figure out what is our point where we say, okay, X amount of calls, we need to add staff. But we need to all be on the same page for that. I just can't pop that on you one budget year. Hey, we need another ambulance. We need to be able to do that together. So meeting every couple times a year, reviewing our numbers is going to be important. Also, I believe our projected income will be higher than it is as far as billing revenue. All right. I don't feel comfortable banking on that, but we have some things in place where we are working really hard to maximize our income for billing. And as that goes on, we'll be able to kind of keep track of that. So I want to make sure that you guys are all involved in that. So we kind of all can say, all right, hey, you know, next year we're going to have to add an additional staff from this hour, or we have to increase the hours of that day car. But that's a decision we all have to make between the finance and the first selectman, us, and believe it or not, the building department, zoning and planning, because they'll be able to tell us what's coming up. And when we get these things and we know that, hey, look, they're building 800 apartments in the next 2 years, well, I'm going to tell you that's going to be a problem for us, and we're going to have to address it. So that way we're all on the same page, and that way we can plan for it. I think that's the best way to go about, you know, down the road working in EMS here, because it's an evolving thing. Our call volume is, when I got on and started doing ambulance calls, it was a couple hundred a year. All right. And now we're doing, 160, 180 a month sometimes. So that is where I'm going to need your guys to help us. Do you guys have any questions for us?
I do.
Yes,
You said earlier a 5-year contract with standardized billing for 5 years. Are we
Correct.
obligated to 5 years right now, or is this like?
We can, just like our contract has been, we can get out of it in 60 days. Either party can. We've had that in there for 21 years that we've been in our contract with our vendor.
Okay.
That's been the standard language that's in there.
Okay. And
But
then
we have the billing, I have with the raises and whatever, I know what it's going to cost 5 years from now. When I come to you in 5 years, or whoever's sitting in your seats, or whoever's sitting in my seat comes to you, well, this is the X amount for the monthly fees for EMS.
and what's the annual increase for next year?
I think it was 2%. I think there was an increase of 2%.
Is that
Yeah,
generally how it's flowing out over the next 5 years?
Correct.
Okay.
So there's raises, for the staff. That's basically all it is. Vinny Wheeler worked really hard with us in this, and he absorbed about $50,000 of additional costs that we were paying for on a regular basis between holdovers, holiday pay. He absorbed all that with his within his thing. He's worked really well with us. And it's going to save us, rework this contract is going to save us about $250,000 over the 5 years.
So with the current stress that you're under right now, do you have capacity when we bring this on? Is there room, or so next year it's just the 2% increase on the salaries, or are
Correct.
we going to have to go to another ambulance or?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. right now, if we keep it the way it is, it stays 2%. If us as a group, which I want everyone involved in this, because I don't want to be the one making these decisions, all right? We need to all, for the town, for public safety, for your finances, we need to all make these decisions. But we need to figure out what the metrics are to say, okay, we've reached a point where we have to add additional staff. And I want all you guys involved with that, and that's something that, maybe an additional meeting once or twice a year that we have to sit down and look at that before budget time, to kind of monitor that.
Yeah, can I jump in real quick? Andy and I have talked about this. We have an assisted living coming in. It's going to bring in about 128 beds at 20 memory care slots. And Andy and I have talked about this. We may need to look at this in 6 months. They've estimated that they will ask Brookfield for 3.4 calls per week. That's another 180 calls a year, but we don't know if that's a good number or not. So we may be relooking at this in 6 months. Andy and his team.
To be honest with you, I called North Haven Fire Department, and that facility, they do 10 calls a week at average. Now, I don't know how comprehensive size-wise it is, all right? But I anticipate there will be more additional calls, obviously. So again, Glenn, that's something I want all of us to be part of before budget time. Maybe in September, we sit down and, hey, look, we're a couple months into this. This is what we're projecting. We look at it again in December. This is where we are. What do you guys think? And we have to figure out what our numbers are. Where are we comfortable at? What are the metrics that trigger additional staffing? And again, it's not just going to come from the fire company. It needs to come from all of us. And I'm asking your guys' participation, in that down in the future for sure.
I guess my question is, from looking at this, is even if we're all involved, do we have a qualified way to figure this all out? Or do we need to bring someone in, a third party, to assess this whole thing and to sort it out? Because,
I think, I gotta be honest with you, I think we've done a pretty good job over the last 21 years of staying up with the curve. We have not been sued yet for not meeting our state numbers. No, we haven't had any major issues. We could have somebody look at it. I'm not opposed to anything. Nothing's off the table. I'm just looking for your guys' help to say, hey, look, we need to all be on the same page. And I don't want to spring something on you when I say, hey, look, there's 500 more calls that just popped into our runs. And now we need to look at this about adding additional staffing. Where, when, how much, what days, all that. And there's just so much involved with that. And we have done a very good job of staying on that. And our staff has helped us out a lot with that, running reports and kind of, the high incidence hours. At first, we only had that second ambulance on during the week, Monday through Friday. And then the weekends got really hot and we had to add it right on the weekend. And these are all things we've done over the last several years, as our numbers have gone up.
And 60,000 of it was the labor, roughly.
Correct. Personnel staffing. Absolutely. Yep.
And that gives us coverage that you need.
Correct. That gives us, you're going to have a second paramedic on call at night. The supervisor lives in town here now. All right. Coming from either from Brookfield or an adjoining town within 5 minutes from Brookfield to cover second calls between 6 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning. That's part of their salary. And that's covered under that monthly charge that we have from Mintech. And the fire company, if you guys remember, we had money for a paramedic vehicle in the capital that got cut for EMS. The fire company already bought, after you guys cut it, the fire company voted and we bought a $75,000 paramedic vehicle, fully outfitted, equipped for this program because we believe in it. So the fire company is trying to support this as well. We're working on running, anything that we can do to lessen the burden for the town to run EMS. So we believe in it. So we got that part of it going. So we're doing our part too. It's not, we're not just out here asking with our hand open. We're actually coming to the table with some stuff. So,
okay. Any other Board of Finance members have a question?
Yeah, I've got one. For the training cost, I think it was an increase of 9,000 over what was asked for. Is that a one-time or is that something that will
that's going to be pretty constant? We've absorbed the people that now work for us through Vintech. We are now going to be responsible for training them. That's part of our thing. We have control and maintaining the certifications and things like that. That helps us to maintain control of things. That way, they're trained to our level and our equipment, and it keeps things consistent. Vintech does certain administrative things as far as employees go, sexual harassment, things like that, employer items. But any technical medical training comes from us,
Okay.
and we have to provide it.
Okay. The other question I had, so you mentioned that the billing revenue you think will be changing. Wasn't the billing, is there any metrics to measure? I thought that I'd heard the billing was affected by COVID because patients couldn't actually go to the ER last year unless they were a COVID patient going in. So do we know how much?
It was impacted. I'm watching it grow now. I feel we went on the conservative end after talking to Steve and some of you guys, we were doing this. I don't feel comfortable. I could just inflate that. I could have inflated that number $90,000 and said, we're okay. I don't feel comfortable doing that. Okay. Because anything can happen. I want to be on the conservative end all the time doing that with our billing because it's accurate. In the past, in this town, people have done that, making budgets, and it's been a disaster. Correct, Steve?
That's correct.
Okay.
We're currently at, currently we budgeted for 675 for this current year, and we're at $539,000, roughly, that we've collected. So we're still, for the last, it's April 21st, we got roughly a quarter. We're looking at hoping to bring in about $137,000.
So we're
less expenditures on that.
So we're pretty close. I anticipate we've done some procedural changes and some things with believe it or not, the dispatchers, because the way they dispatch the call affects how we bill the call. So we've worked with the police department, Major Puglisi and Captain Franks. Were great. They helped us out with that. That's seen some revenue changes for us. I do anticipate we cover more calls, we get more revenue. That's just how it works. But I want to just be sure. And again, those are things that we're all going to I want to all discuss together as the year goes on, not just once a year, because then we can all look at it and say, all right, these are the numbers. What do we feel comfortable? Because then we can make a decision about how we feel what the billing revenue number should be, not just me and the fire company. I want you all to feel comfortable and understand why we do what we do and what that means.
Yeah, but that last year's revenue number we didn't know the impact of COVID, right? That was, COVID started.
Correct.
That was it. Okay.
Correct. And we had an increased number of refusals, for people who didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And again, we can't bill for that. It costs us money.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Dan, Ricky, Brianna?
Nothing here.
I really appreciate your time and your thought in this, because this is you're making the town safer. You really are. It's a needed program, and going forward, your participation in this is going to help greatly, because it's something that we all need to be involved in. It's growing, it's changing, and we all need to be on top of it and not play catch up. I don't ever want to do that. I don't want to be on the receiving end of a phone call that we failed or we didn't cover a call appropriately. Our mutual aid, Danbury Hospital purchased Danbury ambulance. The number of ambulances that are available in Danbury to help us out is decreased. So that's kind of something in the back of my mind as well. So that's why I'm really concerned about covering our additional costs.
All right.
I have one question.
Yes.
Do you feel that it's kind of piggybacking off of Eileen, do you feel that the people are feeling more comfortable going to the hospital now? Are you having less of the cancellations now? So you're being able to complete it?
We do, for the most part. There's still some people that call us. We have chronic diabetic patients that we get to them. Their sugar is low. They are unconscious. We fix them. They wake up and they say, I don't want to go to the hospital. And by law, if they're alert and oriented, we can't take them. Otherwise, it's kidnapping. So, and believe it or not, that happens frequently.
Yep.
We have several in town that are non-compliant diabetics that patients that we have to help, and then they don't want to go to the hospital. So we've administered, a couple $100 worth of medicines and IVs and everything else, and then we have to just leave.
Okay. No, that answered it. You were saying more because of COVID, people were.
There are still some people with COVID that don't want to go to the hospital.
Wanted to know if that seemed like it's on the better.
Yeah, it's better. It's improving. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Andy, one last favor. Thanks again for all you do. Is there any way you can send Steve a copy of that contract so he has it?
Will
So
do.
we can just make sure that we know what we got and the
You
commitment.
got it. The contract is always between the fire company and the vendor. And
Yep.
then what we do is we always come to you guys and say, this is what the contract costs for this year and everything else. But
No,
yes,
I mean, part of going forward, if we see the contract, we can read it, understand it a little bit. I think it's
got it.
gonna help everybody. That's all.
you got it.
All
Absolutely.
right, Steve, you want to add anything?
No, I'm good. I think we covered everything.
All right, thanks, Andy. I think Steve's gonna go over the budget later than what he has
Okay.
his thoughts on.
I
So-
appreciate you guys, your time you took with us and helping us out with this. And going forward, we look for your assistance with it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep, bye. All right, Steve, your report, please.
Okay, just a few things. We completed today our application for the 830G renewal of the moratorium. And our affordable housing units have gone from 2.4% to over 4%. So we believe that we will get the moratorium approved again, which again, I think everybody here knows what it is, but it allows the town to maintain control over the development in Brookfield. If you don't have a moratorium and somebody comes in under 830G, they can build anything they want. They go on Federal Road and build a 10-story building. I don't think that is in keeping with the character of Brookfield. So the moratorium allows us to support development, but control it. If anybody who lives on the east side of town is probably aware of this, the state has finally, after 6 years of asking them, repaving Route 133. They're repaving from the churches all the way to the bridge, and they've just started replacing the storm drains. It will be a couple-month project, so people should be aware that there's going to be some traffic, but that road is a mess. We opened up our brush yard the weekend before last, and we got 210 cars the first weekend. So that shows the brush yard is pretty popular. Our Memorial Day parade, we are planning to hold it right now, barring any executive order from the governor or any other thing that might make us change our mind. We've applied for the permit to use the state roads, and we've also applied for a flyover. Unfortunately, with the schools, I talked to John Baril, the bands have not been able to practice really all year, so they're not going to be able to make it. So this will be a toned down parade, but we really would like to have it. Even if we don't have the parade, we really do want to have the memorial itself. So that's good news. Our clinics are going well. We've been full until this week. This week's appointments, which we posted last Friday night at 7, there were some openings. We're hearing that Bethel, New Fairfield, Reading, and a couple of other towns are shutting down their clinics. So we believe that might increase the number of volume that we have coming to ours. We're going to watch this on a weekly basis. We may pare it down, we may do less days, but we're not going to shut it down as of right now. There is a 16 to 18 clinic. Any parent probably got this via email. There's a clinic for 16 to 18 set for the Danbury Fair Mall on May 1st for first shot and May 29th for the second shot. And you can go onto the school website and get all that information. We encourage all 16 to 18-year-olds to get the vaccination. Crack sealing starting this week and starting tomorrow at Town Hall. So we're going to have people moving their cars around so we can seal the cracks. Ralph Tedesco, our head of public works, is we usually do this between 8 and 10-year-old roads when they start to show cracks, and it can extend the life of a road by a couple of years. And it's very, very cost effective to do. It's not real expensive. Our reval is moving forward. We're still posting the streets that will be coming up for the reval, and that should be finished hopefully by the end of the year, maybe into January. And then our company that's doing the reval for the town and doing the door-to-door will be putting together all the information. We'll discuss with them, go back and forth, and we'll have a new grand list, hopefully by the end of January, beginning of February. Marcia and I have been working with a couple people in town to set up the capital committee that we discussed. And we had a meeting today. We met a presentation by the GFOA on best practices for planning capital, and that's moving forward. We're probably going to ask at least one member of the Board of Finance to join that. And my current plan is to have all our departments update their capital projects plan for the following year, this July and August. So then the capital committee can meet in September, October, November, have recommendations, a lot of information, have the supporting detail so that we can present that and have that ready for the boards in the December timeframe. Now, we won't be saying how much we should spend on capital projects, but we'll have them all listed. We'll know what they are. We'll have the detail on them so that the boards can have a much better in-depth insight into those projects.
Before you go on, what's your thoughts on the makeup of that committee? You said possibly one member from the Board of Finance.
We want, well, at least, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, at least one member from the full Board of Finance. And then it will be me, it will be Julian Capitos, it'll be Marcia, our head of Public Works, Ralph Tedesco, most probably, and then we'll pull in department heads as we need them. That's what I'm thinking right now. I'm open to ideas if anybody has any suggestions. And obviously, Ken Post or one of his people from the Board of Ed side, maybe Dan Caldwell. We're looking for it to be a working committee that really can flesh this stuff out.
Right. So what's your optimal size on a working committee in your mind that works?
5 or 6 people, I
Okay.
think. If you get much more than 7, it starts to become unwieldy. Mostly because people can't meet, they can't join. You know, I'm out this week, I'm traveling, things like that. But I'm open to suggestions if anybody has one. It's new, so we want to do it right. On our vaccines, we're over 60% of people over 65 are vaccinated in town. And of those over 75, 83% of people are vaccinated. Now we're working hard. We want to get everybody from 16 to 65 vaccinated. Those numbers are not quite as high. The state has now an overall 61% vaccination rate of at least 1 dose of the vaccine. So that seems to be moving pretty well. Last night, the Board of Selectmen approved the GMP, which is the maximum price documentation for the new school. And we approved that and signed it and sent that back off to O&G, the contractor on that. So that's completely set. They have all the budgets for every single thing that they're going to be doing. And we're well under budget right now. And that's a good thing. And once we've got all the final numbers, now we have the construction numbers, and Paul Checo and his team are pulling together the Tecton and all the other ancillary costs, and we'll come up with a final estimate of what the project will cost in the next 3 weeks. So we'll be ready to show you that at your next meeting. But we are comfortably under budget right now across the board. The one thing I wanted to show you, and we discussed it a little bit earlier. Oh, no, I want to do this first. So we got a note from CCM today, Joe DeLong, the executive director. You may have discussed this before I joined, but the town is currently scheduled as a direct allocation of the America Cares Act money of $1.675 million. There is also county funding in the amount of almost $183 million. And CCM is estimating that the town of Brookfield will get $3.3 million from that county allocation. So the total amount that we will get, if it goes the way they think it will, is $4,967,000 that we will have to allocate. A big caveat right there is, what can we use it for? The Treasury has not set those rules. They have to be out. They have to do that by the 11th of next month. So those should be out on the 12th of next month. And then we can all start to sit down, go over, okay, what can we use it for? What can't we use it for? It's wide open. And the suggestions and things I've heard from various entities and meetings that I've been to, it's all over the place. So we'll just have to wait and see. But that's nothing but good news. Marcia, can you bring up the budget? Here's the numbers. You can see the $4,967,000. Can you bring up just the first page of the budget again? So we did a quick calculation. If we add in the cybersecurity policy, of 32,000. The savings from the health insurance costs for the town and the Board of Ed, and adding in the 90,761 for EMS, we come up with a slightly higher mill rate. Now, this is just a suggestion because the board makes this decision, but we can do all those things and still come in with a slightly lower budget than you had approved previously. And I just wanted you to be aware of that.
It's lower, right? You said slightly higher, then you said slightly lower. It's
Oh,
lower.
no, slightly lower. It goes from
Yeah.
1.52% to 1.49. I apologize.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fine, Steve. It wasn't a mistake. I just want to clarify, that's all.
Yeah, no, it's good to clarify. And that's it for the first selection.
So this takes into account the school side savings, the addition of the cyberspace and the 90,000 going forward for the E EMS.
Correct. And we'll send that out to you tomorrow. We just want to double check. We'll send you like an interim budget that you can look at.
Now, on this windfall of money,
Yeah.
is there a thought process of leaving the budget at 149 increase and using that elsewhere? Or is there a part of that using it to offset? I mean, where is your mindset?
And on top of that question, because this is related, sorry to interrupt, Steve.
That's right.
How does that relate? Last meeting, we talked about, expenses and that it was capped and that at a certain number because we had kind of fully loaded what could be reimbursed, and it was capped at a number much less than the $4.9 million. So how does that relate to this discussion?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer, guys. We're getting conflicting information. The areas that they've allocated this money for cover the gamut from infrastructure to health to schools to anything you can imagine. And from a big picture standpoint, the big paragraph, right? But the devil's in the details. And it really depends on what the Treasury decides the rules are going to be as to what we can spend that money for. None of that money is considered in our budget as of today, except for the grants that we already know we're getting and what they're for and what we can spend that money on. So I think it's 15 grants we've already been awarded. We know what those are for. We know what we can apply them against, but we didn't take any of this 1.6 million into account. Does that answer your question, Glenn?
Well, it's Dan's question. My question was a little different. Yeah. The 1.6 we did take into account, right? Because we put that against the debt service and we took the 300,000 and carried it over. It was like 1.9, wasn't it?
No,
That was the premium.
Oh, that was a premium. I apologize. Yep,
Yeah.
I apologize. Yep.
It gets confusing.
Okay.
So, next month, we're going to probably have some very, very interesting conversations as to what we'll do with that funding.
But by next, go ahead, Darlene. I apologize.
My question's not about the budget, it's about the COVID vaccination. So if yours is about budget, you can go
No,
first.
go ahead. I don't even know what I want to ask.
Okay. You were mentioning that the vaccination rate for the different age groups, is that data coming from the CDC or is that based on the Brookfield clinics?
That's based on the Department of Public Health in the state of Connecticut as given to our Director of Public Health.
Oh, okay. So the fact that I got my vaccine in Waterbury, you guys.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's done by town.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so let's go back to this windfall that we can get or whatever we can get is by next meeting, I know, like you say, in the 11th, Steve, the state, I mean, can we get somewhat of a little bit of a game plan? I know you said you talked to some department heads and you shook your head. It was all over the place.
Yeah.
And I'm not belittling that. Don't take it wrong. But I think strategically with this 3-year bubble and a lot of things happening, we have a real opportunity here to make some good headway.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking to the department heads and making them aware of this funding and asking them to blue sky what they would use this funding for, where they think it should be applied. And they'll come back to us. But again, the devil is in the details. We could blue sky for 40 hours and none of the things we blue sky might be eligible.
No, understood.
Yeah, so, our guys are thinking about it.
Okay. Anybody else, any questions?
I have one thing, but it's not really a question. It's just more of a statement. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that I got vaccinated at the Brookfield Clinic,
Mhm.
and it was a wonderful experience. Everyone was so wonderful, the volunteers, and it really was just such an example of how great our town is. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's managing it. I saw Dan there. Of course, I was nervous because I don't like shots. So I made millions of friends because I was talking to everyone because I was so scared. But, again, I just wanted to say thank you. And it was a great experience for me. And I hope more people get to take advantage of it.
Thank you, Brianna. I've gotten literally dozens of calls or emails saying exactly the same thing. Our volunteers are just incredible, and they're putting in a lot of hours. And we're having a little thank you for them. Get lunch and stuff like that, because I think that's a reasonable thing to do. But none of them, say, no, I don't need a lunch. I don't need any help. But we like to say thank you, and we're going to do that to all the volunteers in town. There's plenty of people who, not working at the clinic, have volunteered in other ways, lining up for the food pantry. We needed additional people. And Brookfielders just, when there's a problem, they step up, and that's why it's great to live here.
Okay.
It is.
All right. Any other questions? None. All right, Marcia.
All right, let me share my screen here. Okay, so I don't, this is our regular presentation, the monthly meeting presentation. That I don't know if that little screen sharing thing is in your way or just in my way. That we had sent the graphs last week on the economic recovery dashboard. All the revenues are good except for interest, as we know. The expenditures so far were really close to the budget for the HR professionals, and police overtime is still in line. We're expecting that to go up. Just anecdotally that I approved payroll this week, and it did look like some of the police overtime did go up. So we'll see how that works out. Those were the two big ones that we were watching. For the contingency status for COVID, we expect to cover all our direct costs, including the Board of Ed. I have some details on the next slide. For the vaccinations that we're filing for the first quarter reimbursement now through March 31st for the vaccination. It should be 100% of eligible costs are covered. The big question is always, what do they consider eligible costs? We've asked you for a budget transfer for the second quarter. That clinic is being held at St. Joe's. And we think that by the end of the second quarter, the vaccination clinic will be done if it lasts the whole quarter. For non-vaccine expenditures for COVID, supplies, most are covered with the current budget. We shouldn't need much more in supplies. Extra cleanings and town hall monitors are the two, or the various building monitors are the two costs that are continuing for the non-vaccine costs. So the contingency, again, is in good shape. That if we look at the COVID revenue, that new since last month, that FEMA, we had a call with them to discuss the filing last week, that there's a new FEMA grant that is called the Reopening Grant. It is interim guidance, and in addition to it being interim, they say in their interim guidance that they may or might cover these costs for the period January 21st to September 21st. So again, nothing is definite, but they might cover extra cleaning and door monitors, including the school. And so for the period ending March 31st, we're going to apply for approximately $75,000 of funding from that to see what happens. And then the American Rescue, again, 5/11 is the date that's due. Everyone is saying that they don't expect the Treasury to come out with the rules early, and that none of this presentation includes that new amount that we just found out about today. Because Connecticut doesn't have counties, I just assumed that our 1.6, they would have figured that in there, but this is the first time we've heard that there's an additional 3.2.
Before you go on to the next slide, Marcia,
Yes.
on the reopening, is there any way we can put some of that EMS labor in there because of COVID stress on our system? I mean, why not apply for it? Because one of the reasons that we are stressed is obviously the pandemic and things. So can that be part of the reopening?
Oops, sorry, I'm trying to silence myself here.
It might be. We'll certainly look at it very, very carefully.
Sorry, my husband just got home. That we will try to we'll try to look at that. We've been just going through anything, and then what we were going to do is we were going to file quarterly. And so if we find out, oh, we could add this to it, maybe we buy a little bit more in supplies to stock up a little bit on what we wouldn't have normally done. So I do have a note to look at EMS stuff in there.
Before we go farther, too, Steve and Marcia, do we have enough staff in place for all these grants and all this accounting and all of this dollars on the table? Now that we're into millions of dollars, are we getting this? Are we have enough staff to file all these things? Are we able to not leave money on the table if we were to pay someone $30,000 to help out just for this effort?
That's a really good question. You know, we had asked for, and you guys approved for additional staffing in finance. But if we get into all of these grants, and if they're anything like doing the FEMA documentation, we may need additional staff, even above what we've asked for, because FEMA takes an incredibly long amount of time. The documentation is horrendous. So that's a good question, and we'll watch that. Marcia, do you have an opinion on that?
So right now, this quarter should be a slow quarter for us. The budget is done. The financial statements are done. The debt doesn't, the bond work doesn't start until after the year ends. Kevin is doing an excellent job on the FEMA reporting, putting in a lot of time to do a real nice job. He did a great job on that storm Isa, and they actually complimented him as one of the best that they have, and he got it in first. He kind of loves this FEMA reporting stuff. So so right now, I think that I appreciate the thought, but right now I think we can get it covered.
All right, let me ask another question then. Would it be prudent for us to bring in your staff now that we approve? So by the time we get to the rush and doing things, that we don't lose the time for training and orientations and everything else?
Yeah, that's a thought. We would have to, there would be an appropriation. We'd either have to find money within our existing budget. So I like the idea, Glenn, because it does take time to hire somebody and to get them in and to train them. It would be nice to get a jump on that. We're about 2.5 months from the end of the year. So Marcia, how many, we had about what, 34,000 in that budget line for next year. So we need what, 6 or 8,000 if we hired somebody early? I'm
Yes,
going off the top of my head.
and it seems reasonable on the top of my head.
So we can look at that if you want.
I think it's prudent. I would hate to leave money on the table of all these millions because we stretched our staff.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan, you have an opinion? Because maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right. I mean, if we can do it, that sounds good. That's a good thought. I mean,
We're not going to leave money on the table.
We can guarantee you that if Marcia has to work to midnight.
Yeah.
We're
What,
not
I
gonna leave
love
money.
the idea too. What's the risk if a budget doesn't pass?
Correct.
Yeah. Then we would have to find that 6 or 8,000, but I think we can find it.
Well, and
And the 32 on top of it. I agree with the 34.
And
I love the idea and I agree with it. I just want to play out the.
yeah, and to be honest, I'm still wondering if we do this as a temporary position, because I would love to combine our part-time with the Board of Ed part-time at some point as we mesh a little bit more. But agreed. So,
You
but
know,
right now, we're not planning on doing any of that, that we
Okay,
think we have it
alright,
under
my bad.
control, that we're not going to leave any money on the table, that
Yeah, the schools will probably be faced with the same issue. They're getting 795,000. I don't think it'll be quite as arduous for them to do it, but they're going to, have extra work to do too. I like Marcia's idea of getting someone in that can work on both sides.
but that's a little bit down the road here, but
All right, go on then. I
Okay.
was premature, sorry.
no, I appreciate the thought. That so those are the ones that we're working on, and some of these have already been closed. Some of them have quarterly reporting. So that's where we're going.
Okay.
That with respect to revenues, this is just a summary of the revenues that just showing a condensed version of what we have, and you can see everything is doing well except for investment earnings, and this other financing sources is money that we're not going to transfer that we thought that we would transfer. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. The way we've calculated this is on taxes. We did the year-to-date plus the actual 3 months of last year, assuming that we were in COVID then, we're in COVID now. Licenses and permits, last year that they had stalled for a little bit, as did taxes licenses and permits had stalled for a little bit, as did conveyance taxes when nobody could really know how to move, and before we all had subscriptions to Zoom. That so the licenses and permits we have prorated over the 12 months to try and figure out what the last 3 months might look like. Plus, we've accounted for the big ones separately. That we know that we didn't prorate the one big one that came in, and we know there's another big one that we're expecting June or July. Intergovernmental revenue, we know what that's going to be. So that's how we're ending up here with the revenue. We may want to do some manipulation of this in a legal way that and pull out some of because $1 million of revenue, we can't get that into another fund to sock it away because we'd have to do an additional appropriation. But if we start pulling out some of these intergovernmental revenues that for COVID, pull the revenue out and the expenses out, plunk them into another fund, our grant fund, then our expenditures will also be over, and maybe do a little graph on how that would look for the next meeting. and those revenues only include what we know about. We don't have Storm Isa that the application is in. We don't have the 2 applications for FEMA that we're working on now. And certainly we don't have the American Recovers in there. We've covered projects. We've asked for transfers that we've had significantly more recordings with these low interest rates. People are refinancing. So we've asked, she needs more books to post it all in. So that's what this is. Public Works overtime, we've talked about right sizing that budget, and we did for the 2022 year. So at the time we did this, we're about 42,000 for Storm Isa and the snow for overtime. We're covering that with other lines. Public Works for refuse, it's the same thing. It's when you want to be covered by FEMA, you have to have a monitor that's there watching the refuse be taken away, and where it goes. And so that's why that line is over. The refuse sat there in a big pile until we knew it was going to be covered by FEMA, so we could make sure to have that monitor. Grounds, their supply account for Parks and Grounds is Storm Isa, and then they had a tree fall on a fence with a $5,000 deductible. And Public Works, Safety and Security, we would like to move that to capital non-recurring so that if the rest of the camera system gets covered, we could do it all at one time. That this money was in there for a camera system for the fuel pumps, that when we were required to either put a camera system in or a fence around it, and the camera system was decided to be the better option. And so just so we can get the right economies of scale and not do a little system this year for the fuel pumps and other things potentially next year, we want to just move this into that project. We're estimating to remain within budget. It's too early to call on how much will be under budget. All right, so this is an exciting graph. That what we have here is the debt. This green area is the debt that we have in each of these years, starting in 2022 to 2030. That this is our existing debt. This is our debt, an estimated debt for the next tranche of the new school. And this is our proposed budget, the debt for that. And again, just estimating all of that and the timing that we would pay it off. So this kind of shows you the green area, shows you here's where the bubble is, and the number of dollars of that bubble. And then what we're looking at is this yellow bar each year would be our comparative debt for what we had in 2021. So all of our debt is going to be higher, but it's going to be significantly higher in these years. So when we start thinking about our debt bubble strategy, we know that in 2022, we covered it with a premium. That's dark blue is a premium. It's possible that we get another premium on the second tranche of money, that could cover 2023. And these bars here are approximately $1.5 million to 1.7 million that we're looking at. This one, if we could get our 1.6 million of the one that we knew about, 1.6 million of recovery money to cover our lost revenue and the expenses as we laid out last month, we could sock that away to cover this year of the debt bubble. That we've got some money now in capital non-recurring, 777,000 that we're not using for this year's budget. Plus, we'll try to figure out how to get more money in there from this year's budget. from the surplus to put against this year. Then we have 2 years, and hopefully our mill rate will just kind of keep going up slowly, so that we don't have to keep covering it with one-time revenue, and we cover it with taxes. These 2 years, potentially, we use Iroquois money, that if Iroquois comes in. So the scary part of this is there's only 1 year, besides the 2022, one future year that we know we could get this money, and that's if we sock this money aside. So premium isn't guaranteed. We still don't have the rules on the American Recovery. We don't know for sure that Iroquois is going to go through and how much it's going to be. But this is why we keep talking about this debt bubble, and I can send you this graph so that you can see it a little bit better. But that's kind of just trying to visualize what this debt bubble looks like and what type of strategy we might want to take to offset it.
Hey, Marcia, the thin green sector at the very top, the proposed budget, is that including the proposed capital budget, the 10-year plan, or is that just this year?
That's just this year. The other years will have, it'll keep going up. That I didn't want to get too many variables in there, but then next year we'll have more, and the year after we'll have more, correct?
Right. So really, that it's going to be if we follow our 10-year plan, it's not a bubble. It's going to be a new plateau.
Well, it's going to be only half of the size, because this year we had twice as much debt. That it's only going to be half of the size, and it will still go here, but it will increase this. Correct.
Yeah, Dan, if we continue to follow the plan by spending more cash rather than borrowing, which is, I think everybody wants to do, you're right. We're going to hit a new plateau for capital cash spending, but hopefully bonding will go down.
Well, I mean, we have the library, we have the police station. That's all in the 10-year plan.
True.
So Marcia, I'm going to ask a stupid question. Year 2025. I know you have that as the CNR, the
Yep.
capital non-used. But if we didn't have that, what would it raise our budget by $3 million? Is this what that graph is showing me to cover the debt? From current debt service to future debt service, it'd be a $3 million differential.
A little bit less, but yeah.
Right, it's right. I can see it roughly goes from about a little above 5 million to
Yep.
a little bit below 8 million.
Right.
Yep.
So we would be talking that increase on the budget.
Yes.
Right.
That's a large percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 1.4 mils.
Yeah. When you double your debt load, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's coming out the gate, no raises, no operating increases, no increase of any kind of services. That's out the gate.
Correct. And no increase in mill rates or anything like that. It's just, it is, although it looks complicated, it's the simplified version that, yes.
Okay.
So it kind of, I hope it makes you understand why we keep saying, but we got to think about the debt bubble, but we got to think about the debt bubble.
I mean, we all knew this. We had the 10-year plan. Now we have to minimize it as much as possible, in my opinion, for our residents.
Oh yeah, Steve, there's no unknowns here. I mean, I don't want you to think we're saying that. This is not.
I don't think you're saying that at all. It's just residents kind of forget sometimes that we've all agreed to this.
Yeah. So,
But this is where I go back to that surplus of foreign change $1 million of how we really need to plan that. What can we use for this bubble? What can we not use for this bubble? Because blue sky is great, but this is what's reality looking at us in the face. This is the reality of our liabilities right now.
You're absolutely right. And I think if we can use that almost $5 million to offset projects, whatever they are, for this debt bubble, it would be a good thing to do.
So that is, and again, I can send this to you that, and I did try to keep it simple. There's other things that are going to happen. This Iroquois, we had originally said in our projection that we would use new taxes for funding capital. So this is not within that thing if we've got to use it for this. So we don't want to take and say, oh, let's, cut our mill rate, that we want to keep bumping it up a little bit higher. And maybe we do that just so that we can be at the right level when we get here. Maybe we do that by increasing our capital cash spend and then pulling it back in that year that once we reach the increase that we finally need.
That might be the only solution is, pushing, making a 1-year moratorium on anything but emergency cash capital items might be what you have to do at the time.
Yep, could be.
Any questions on any of that?
No, my only concern, and it's a longer term concern, is with all the elections going forward in this next year, we got to make sure that whoever's in the first selectman seat or whoever's in the Board of Finance really understands the dynamics of that.
Yes.
So, okay, go ahead, Marcia.
I'm done.
All right, you're done. Anything on the audit, Dan?
No.
Okay, we've done the derivative. Can you bring up the old business? There's none. New business. We've done the budget review. Budget transfers, Marcia. We haven't seen your sheet on that.
Right. So you had that in your package, and hold on, let me find it to pull it up. My connection is going extremely slow here. Let me get it to a bigger spot. This was, you had this on your monthly budget report that, so we're looking for money, the increases we just went through in the presentation, why we had those increases between COVID and the regular ones. And this is where we're getting the money from. That so COVID, we continue to have the moratorium on that. We don't have to put things in the paper. I think that goes to April 30th. So we're getting savings there, and we're pulling it. Conferences, we're getting savings and we're pulling it. Diane didn't work as many hours as budgeted, so we're taking that from you. You guys didn't have food at your meetings, so we're taking that from you. We've got 5,000 coming from my budget. We've got money going into information technology. I can't, that's a COVID thing. Oh, that's Zoom. We've got the town clerk, and you have a separate one showing the vaccination budget. The town clerk, these are for her new filings because of the books. Registrar of voters, that they had some money in their budget, a one-time cost for moving, and they didn't use it all. The land use, that's the public notices that we're covering some COVID costs with. Insurance, there was $190 different than what we had originally thought. Travel and conferences, we're pulling that from the community development, that they're not having any. More and more, the departments are finding that their conferences are going to be online, so that they keep threatening that, and that there'll be a fee. So we haven't taken all of the conference money. Workers' comp is under budget. Let's see, building maintenance, that is for the police department, the extra cleanings. The fire marshal, we're taking some from wages, that we have one fire marshal on military leave, which is fine because they're not allowed to be doing a lot of their stuff right now. So it's worked out pretty well. The part-time wages, again, they're not allowed to do a lot of their stuff. So that is a savings there. The travel and conferences we took from there. We've got the extra cleaning and the desk monitor that we've put money into. The vaccination clinic is here. For supplies, we try to divide a lot of this up this year into the departments, just so it's the right approval process. The right department heads sign off and not group everything in here. The highway department, that's the overtime we talked about. Safety and security, that we want to move to a transfer to capital non-recurring. The refuse is the monitor for watching us chip the brush. Electricity, there should be a savings there. Sporadic wages that we are paying for our costs for FEMA. We've got a part-time coordinator for the vaccinations and a part-time administrative person that is included in this budget. Other than that, we have, I've heard now, over 100 volunteers. We would normally take their volunteer hours and get paid for that from apply it towards FEMA. We can't, because that only applies to our matching share, and their FEMA is now paying 100%, so we don't have a matching share. The overtime, we've got some overtime for Doc and for the employees, the admin in that department. That we needed more money for some of the water testing. The senior center, they're obviously not doing their program, so we've taken that money. That they've got a door monitor there, and they've got an extra social services need there because that is increased. So those are what these two items are. Software is again, the social services thing, so that they can, there's a grant there that if they're electronic, the people can apply for rent assistance and other assistance electronically, but there's a cost for some of that software. This is the library, door monitors, 54 hours a week. Parks and Rec, that this is additional cleanings at the bathrooms and COVID costs. Grounds, that was the one with the tree, and the tree fell on the fence, and the ICS, Ricky is telling me how to pronounce it. I hope I got that right. And then financing costs, that we shouldn't need all of that. We didn't do a bond anticipation note this year, so we've got some savings there. That's the money for the cameras that we've just moving. We ended up needing $170 out of our contingency, our regular contingency, 63,000 out of our COVID contingency, still leaving us with 484,000 of contingencies, which right now we're thinking we might need to cover the Board of Ed net amount, barring any of this grant manipulation, this grant adjustments. So we may need 100,000 for the Board of Ed, and we may need money for that wall that they're looking at some of their capital projects, see if we can just transfer it from one capital project to this one. So that's what they're still working on. Those are our transfers. Then, so we're asking you to approve the interdepartment transfers and the COVID transfers.
Yep. So we'll make the motion on each of them, correct? 2 motions.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the intra and interdepartmental transfers as outlined on the expenditure budget versus actual through 3/31/2021 report provided by Marcia Marion, Controller Director of Finance. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. I'll also make a motion that we approve the budget details for the COVID vaccination cost summary as of March 31, projecting to June 30th, 2021, as provided by Marcia Marion, Controller, Director of Finance.
I'll second.
Discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes. All right. Now, we did the center fire budget discussions. I'll start off and then I think Ricky wants to add in a quick thing. Steve, if you don't mind, if you could find out the date per what Dan asked, what's the latest we can make those changes are?
Will do.
And if it's 7 days, Steve, or whatever it is, maybe we can move our regular meeting ahead a day instead of having 2 meetings and just do a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday. Would that work for your team?
Sure. Just make it, just have to make it a special meeting.
Yeah, but I mean, this way, instead of getting ourselves set for Tuesday and a Wednesday, we just do our regular business on a Tuesday if it's only 1 day.
I agree.
Everybody else okay with that on our team?
Yep.
All right. Also, Steve, when you talk to the fire department, can you get their old contract and their new contract so we can look at both of them?
Yeah, I've already written down. So Andy said he would get it. I'll follow up with them tomorrow.
Yeah, let's get the old one too, so you can compare apples to apples and just make sure that, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think you need and to vet for us. So if you feel comfortable, we're comfortable.
Yep.
As for the other budget changes, do you guys want to have a quick talk about the where we're at with that? Since we're talking about the budget, it's on the agenda. Base value, I'm okay with the changes that Steve and Marcia presented to us. I think the 1.49 is a reasonable increase, and I think the adjustments are reasonable.
It's a decrease, Glenn.
Huh?
It's a decrease, not an increase.
Yeah, decrease. I said the same thing. The decrease from 152 down to 148, I think is reasonable. I think the changes are reasonable. I think it's part of what we've always talked about is if you have valid points to bring up, we're able to listen and make the changes. So Dan, you want to start us so we're all on the same page?
I agree. I think that Andy and Lou's presentation today was compelling. Got to do it. Absolutely. I continue to praise Rosa and her team for continuing to scrub and passing along savings to the overall budget. today was good. I think we're in good shape. I do want to make sure that we get to a final number sooner rather than later. But no, I think we're in good shape.
Eileen?
No, I agree with what Dan said. I do like that we're getting our numbers updated in a really timely fashion. And, I feel like in the past, we've always had a budget that we approved and those numbers were the numbers and we didn't look at line items. And I think that the departments are doing a great job of keeping those numbers updated while we have the time to make the adjustments. So yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, Ricky, on this point, and then we'll get to your point afterwards.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that the confidence of the Board of Finance to be able to come to us after we'd already approved the budget to say, hey, we have more savings is a great thing. And it absolutely helps out, as other departments have a need for an increase, that it's there to be able to approve it before we get it to referendum. So just like Dan and Eileen stated before, all good things.
Brianna?
Yep, I'm good with it.
All right, I'll summarize it too. I think we've gotten to a point where this has allowed us to be proactive instead of reactive, these discussions and the transparencies with the Board of Ed and Steve's departments coming to us at this time. Instead of closing ourselves in a box and having to react to things, we're being proactive with the cuts, the reductions, and it's so much a better process than last year. I can't say it enough of how this whole team effort has been tremendous. And Steve, if you get us those dates, I think we're good with your suggestions as well.
Yeah.
All right, Ricky, you wanted to add something under the budget process here.
Yeah. After we had approved the budget, I was kind of kicking myself that I didn't push harder on the locker room design funding. I really strongly feel that we should consider paying that with cash now, if we can, within this year's budget, and take it out of the next year's budget altogether. The risk is that they said that it takes about 2 months for the design to occur. And then once they have the design, then they can go out to bid. If they were to get the design funding now, they'd have 2 months to have it ready, rather than wait for referendum to pass for it to go out to bid, since we're bonding it in this current budget. By then, they wouldn't even be able to start the design until sometime in September, and then they wouldn't be able to go out to bid until probably December. Maybe my timing is off on that, but I feel like as long as they can move this along, if we can move this whole project along a little bit quicker, if we have the redesign funding in place now for them, so that way once referendum passes, if it passes, and the locker room project is approved, then they can go out to bid and have the bids ready, knowing that the votes are there and the design is already done for the project.
So Rick, you're saying that the 35,000, not the 35,000, 291 that you want to make a transfer now to take it out of contingency, let's say, and put it into to capital non-recurring.
Yes. Or take it out of capital non-recurring if we have it in there now. And it's not a huge sum, and I know it's not ideal. If we bond for it, there's a potential risk too that by the time it goes out to bid, the project could be even higher. The cost of materials haven't been going down for sure. So the sooner that we could actually get the bids, if we have the redesign or the design in place, we can get the bids done sooner, even before the funding is.
So is your premise, Ricky, that we can't go out to bid on the design until we actually have the bond in place? I thought it was when we have when the vote happens.
No, we can't get the design done until. So this is based on the meeting that we had with Paul Checo. We can't get the design. We can't get the design done until the bonding is in place.
I don't think, I think, isn't it when the vote happens? So it would be on May 19th?
If it was cash, yes, but since it's bonded, we have to wait until the bond is in place, correct?
On that, Ricky, I wouldn't agree with you. Once the town has the residents and the taxpayers have approved the budget, how we fund that, we could do that July, August if it's bonded, but they could start July 1st.
So what I think Ricky is saying is this line, 5A, is what we want to move to right now.
Right.
And 5B, they could start as soon as and if this is passed.
Correct.
I get that. I completely get that, but I'm not sure I agree with the 6-month delay that you're.
No, I was probably wrong in assuming that we had to wait to have the funding in place for the redesign. I guess that my assumption was off on that then.
We have the authority, once the referendum is passed, to start spending that money July 1st, even if the bonding hasn't been arranged yet for it.
Okay.
But to your point about the other timing, that we could get a 2.5-month jump if we made a transfer tonight to say that we want to take 35,000 out of contingency and put it into capital non-recurring.
You know, if this suggestion had come to us back last August, I'd say, wait a minute, we don't know where we're going to end up with contingency. We don't know where we're ending up with all of our budget lines, but we're pretty comfortable with our budget that we're going to be at budget or under it. There is room in the contingency. I don't anticipate any major hits to contingency over the next 2 months at all. We don't see anything on the horizon. So you could do that and we would stay comfortably within budget.
Or we could put that $35,000 in the general fund.
Yeah.
That's so basically you're accelerating an expense
well,
for this year that would otherwise be in next year at the cost of the general. Again, it's small, but
yeah, what Ricky's suggesting is taking it out of next year's budget and putting it in this year.
I get it.
And there's room in this year's budget.
Well, again, room. It comes from somewhere, and in this case, it comes from surplus, which gets the general fund, which is also a goal.
No, not surplus. We would take it out. It had to come out of this year's budget, not out of the general fund. So either take it out of contingency, or if other departments are under budget, we could take it out of those departments.
But my point is that we're taking it out of at the end of the year, there will be a surplus, and this will eat into that surplus. So
what we could do, to your point, Dan, is that we could increase next year's contingency by 35,291, and then that balances it out year to year.
I mean, we're going to remove the bonding for the 35,291. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, not that it's going to be a huge impact on the interest over the life of it, but to bonding in 20, I think it was what, for 20 years? 20-year bond for 30. Yeah, setting a 20-year bond for 35,000 just doesn't make sense either.
So do they have to wait until July 1st to even begin investigating, or can they once the referendum passes, let's assume it passes on May 18th, on the 19th, can they start interviewing firms for bids to start on July 1st?
I thought they needed the redesign before they could go for the bids.
I'm talking about bids for the design, or I guess the design is part of it. I mean, I don't know.
They could start on the 19th if the budget is approved, but they cannot spend any money or commit until July 1st.
Right.
Well, I think if it's bonded, because we talked about this with Ralph's projects for the paving. I think if on the bonded money, that as soon as the bond is approved, they can start spending. That for the general fund, they have to wait until that window of time. The annual budget is a window of time, and the capital projects are from the date approved until they're done.
Yeah, that's true. I stand corrected.
Interesting.
Eileen?
I'm still kind of thinking this through with how much time we save by doing it now. I mean, we're looking at maybe 2 months, a month.
Yep.
I think maybe, I mean, I like the idea of it. I think maybe if we had maybe made that decision a couple months ago and gotten the ball rolling a little bit sooner.
Well, if
And then you
you
have that balance of, do we know that we're gonna have the money, the surplus?
if you approved it right now, you
Yep.
gain at least the time between today and May 18th, which is 6.5, 7 weeks, 6.5 weeks.
No, it's 3.5 weeks.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the 21st today. We're talking about less than a month right now.
Yeah.
How about this, Steve? Do we even have the authority without the Board of Selectmen approving it? Do we have the authority to do this?
Actually, no, the Board of Selectmen would have to appropriate it first.
Yeah.
So it has to go through another whole process.
Yeah, it's got to go through. The Board of Selectmen would take it up, approve the $35,000 to be spent in the design of the boys' locker room and send it to the Board of Finance for your review, consideration, and approval. Now,
Which
we
would
have-
be May 11th.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen could meet this week to do that, but then you guys would have to meet again.
I think, Ricky, the time we're gonna gain ain't really worth the time on the,
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, no, I'm thinking myself because I really wanted to bring it up during the budget discussions and I lost track of it with everything else that was going on with it, so.
I mean, how strongly do you feel on this? I mean, is it something that can wait or do you want us to push it?
No, if we're talking 2 or 3 weeks, you know, in the end of it of an advantage, then, you know, not worth it, but.
Our capital budget, our capital referendum is on the same ticket.
Yeah, so based on this though, they can go out and just not commit until July 1st on the design.
So we would start May 19th, putting the bid specs together with the municipal building committee, putting all that document together to go out to bid. That's going to take 2 to 3 weeks minimum.
But is the design going out to bid or is that already with like Tecton?
Tecton has done some of the design, but they have to complete it and there have been changes, right? No, we don't have to go out to bid because Tecton, they already hired Tecton because they already spent $100,000.
That they can go.
But would Tecton start, since we already have contracts with them, would they start without?
I think they probably would,
So we
pending our,
may not even lose that much time.
right. We just can't legally commit to the.
Yeah.
Well, bonded, we could legally commit the 19th, so yeah. We could say to Tecton, start the design on the 19th.
Can
you're
you
right.
check into that, Steve, and get back to us? Because if Ricky feels strongly about it, I'm willing to go along with Ricky if he's that strong about it, that let's see what has to be done. If we can, if that scenario can work, we can go with that. If that scenario can't work, we could discuss maybe a special meeting and get this done a little sooner.
Or could we just say that it would be all right for them to spend it out of their budget if this budget doesn't get approved?
Well, that's between you and Steve, that I'm okay with that. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously the board has to be okay. I'm just one of the members. here.
Yeah, I mean, I did approach the Board of Ed initially to see if they had.
I'm more than willing to take this to the Board of Selectmen. It's not a lot of money. I'm comfortable we could keep it within this year's budget. We can have a special Board of Selectmen meeting this week and just push it, bring it into this year and gain 3.5 weeks. I don't know why I thought 6.
We'd have to meet then to vote
And
on
you would have to meet too. It'll be a 5-minute meeting.
it. Like,
I can guarantee it won't be a 5-minute meeting. 'Cause
Well, you can.
It
make
won't be 5 minutes. Dan, I agree.
Well,
To be honest with you, I try to listen to every one of our members' concerns, and some of us members are very vocal and others aren't. So when a less vocal member brings something up, I like to look at all the options. How's that, Dan?
I agree.
And I get the burden on all of us, and it's not going to be 5 minutes. But I would do the same if you had a real something that really meant something to you, we would all do the same. That's
I'm not-
why
I'm not disputing that at all. I agree with you. Let's take it under advice. I agree.
So Steve, figure out what we can do. If we can get it started without special meetings,
Yeah, let me
like
see. What I
Marcia suggested, I think we're all okay with that.
Okay,
What if you just said, hey, it'd be all right for them to put that 35,000 in their operating budget and then approve a transfer at your next regularly scheduled meetings?
who they do you mean?
That, so if you say, hey, if it doesn't pass at our transfer, we're fine with you putting that, pay for that out of your operating budget for this year. But we're planning on the next selectmen's meeting and the next Board of Finance meeting to do a transfer to cover that.
Yeah, it's a little unusual. I'd like to double check it.
It's also a little presumptuous.
I mean, the only thing is that, to Dan's point in this whole process, is now we're taking 35,000 cash, which was gonna be a surplus and end up in the general fund. And we're replacing that. We had a 20-year bond on that 35,000, which would have meant very few dollars over the course of the 20 years out of the annual budget. It's not a lot of money, but we are changing the terms of how we're paying. 20-year financing of 35,000 versus a one-off sum of 35,000 in cash.
And the language
that-
is still, the language is still in the, that we could still bond for that and just keep it in capital non-recurring.
We could leave the language in there and then just never spend it.
Well, that's above my pay grade.
Well, we've already gotten bond counsel to put together the resolutions and stuff, so we don't want to change that if we can avoid it. We could do that, lower it by 35,000, but 35,000 is virtually nothing in the big scheme of spending and our borrowing.
All right, let's see what you can do, Steve, and get back to us in an email, please.
Will do.
We are also
Anything
missing, we are also
else?
missing Mark. So probably would be fair to make sure that he's included, because he isn't here to have any of this discussion or be privy to it. So I know we've not discussed things of lesser issues because we didn't have a full board. So I feel like we should definitely make sure we have a full board.
Yep, I'll reach out to Mark too as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other things on the budget? All right, any other items before the board?
I just, Glenn,
Yes,
have one thing, when the board of, after you adjourn, can everyone stay for 2 minutes? I'd like to discuss something with you that has nothing to do with the Board of Finance or the town.
okay.
Sure.
All right, any public comment? All right, hearing none, we make a motion to adjourn, correct? So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?